In a game filled with a lot of cool weapons, have you ever just desired to punch things really hard? Well, Martial Artist might be the class for you. I find this class to be one of the most fun classes in the game, and potentially the fastest and most spammy, along with being a very high DPS class. The class is notable for having short cooldowns and fast ways to recharge its own arts, along with a high critical hit rate to hit as hard as possible. In this video, I do want to discuss the Martial Artist class, talk about its strengths and weaknesses, and showcase how to use the class most effectively. As always, if you enjoy these guides, please consider subscribing to the channel because it does help out a lot and I will love you forever. I'm also still having a few issues with my wrist and typing, so this video will be mostly unscripted again. I will try not to ramble. Let's get into it. The S rank for Martial Artist is Senna. This is actually pretty fitting as Senna has the highest attack stat in the game, although she does have pretty low dexterity and that can be a little bit annoying at times for some of these higher damage classes. As usual though, pretty much anyone you want can function just fine in the role, so if you really just want to have uni punch things, that'll work just fine, and you should still have plenty of success. The Martial Artist class has a pretty heavy focus on speed, and the arts it has access to reflect this as well. The first art it has is probably its best art, Jackal Claw. This has a power multiplier of 400%, which is pretty decently high. It has an average recharge gauge of 5, and also grants a high critical hit rate on the art and will evade enemy attacks while the art is active. This is really nice because having evasion as a DPS class is always going to be useful, and the general strength of the attack and how often it can be up can make it one of your most powerful art options in most situations, and it probably should be considered to be used on basically every set just because of the high damage and useful utility of the move. Detonating Hit is a Daze art. It has a 250% damage multiplier, which isn't that amazing, and a recharge gauge of 5 as well, and if you attack the enemy from a side, you will inflict Daze. This counts as a positional, so it'll also charge up your talent gauge if you do have it equipped. Now, Daze is pretty decent with Martial Artists because of the synergy of you can unload all of your arts really quickly while the enemy is dazed and not gain any additional aggro, though I find that there are better solutions for this issue, and since it takes up a valuable slot for your positionals, and I have 2 other positionals I am running, I don't see too much use for this art. I think other characters in your party can cover combos just as well, and launch combo is usually going to be better in most situations anyway. Impulse Wave is an art that has a recharge gauge of 3, which is pretty much the fastest possible, but a pretty low power multiplier of 165%. This boosts damage by 50% for every enemy in battle, so it can hit pretty hard in multi-enemy fights, and it does have some area of effect. Now, even though the art is weak, the fact that it has a fast cooldown is still pretty nice because it can lead you to recharging your other arts even faster, which is actually pretty good with the kit because it synergizes really well with art recharge effects. And if you want to focus on using as many arts as possible and aren't using the Daze art, this is pretty much a really good option to just make sure you're getting your cooldowns even faster, even though the art takes a little bit longer for its animation than I would like. Destructive Charge is another art that has a recharge gauge of 3, but this one has a much higher power multiplier of 310%. It also boosts damage from the front by 100% and can inflict blowdown if you are lucky. This is one of your best damaging arts as well. It has a really low cooldown, making it one of the best arts in general. And having a cooldown of 3, 3, and 5 on your kit is going to make you hit really hard and recharge your arts very quickly by using all of your cancels. Focus is a stance art that has a recharge gauge of 9. What this does is boost your art recharge speed by 20% and shorten your auto attack intervals by 25%. This is an okay stance. I've used it a couple times. It is nice to have recharge speed boosted, but you can recharge faster by just having shorter cooldown arts in my opinion, and the shortened auto attack speed isn't really going to make that much difference in most situations, so I don't really think this is really a necessary stance because there's better ways to just get your art cooldowns even faster. Speaking of art recharge, the talent art for the kit is Raging Force. This has a 700% power multiplier and a recharge gauge of 2, making it one of the quickest talent arts to recharge, and having a pretty decent power multiplier at that. However, the gimmick is it'll deplete all of your arts that are currently charged, but also increase the damage of the talent art relative to the number of arts that have been depleted. This is actually a pretty good effect, and if you deplete all 6 arts, you can hit some really crazy damage numbers of like over 2 million. And even if you currently have no arts on cooldown, it's still a pretty good talent art just for the decent power multiplier, the very fast recharge gauge, and the fact that it'll still do about 200 or 300,000 if you have the right setup. For my master arts, I am running the pretty standard Cross Impact. This is a pretty good art to have on all of your Agnes DPS classes because Power Charge is such a powerful effect that increase the damage of your next art. It includes talent arts, it includes your master arts and fusion arts, and it's just a really useful effect to have overall, and it has a pretty short cooldown as well, which synergizes pretty well with the class. Quick Draw is an ether attack, so that's not the greatest synergy there, but it does have a really fast recharge gauge of 100%, and will also boost damage when you attack from the front by 100%. If you link this art with Destructive Charge, you will get both of your damage boosts when attacking from the front, and fill up your talent gauge basically instantly from getting both positional effects. I find it pretty useful for that reason, and it also comes with the bonus effect of also allowing you to evade attacks, giving you evasion on 2 of your master arts, which is really nice for a DPS class. Hidden Thorn is my last art. This is your most powerful fusion art option with a 440% damage multiplier, and it can also apply the bleed effect if you are really, really lucky. The negative of this, though, is that the recharge gauge is 27 seconds, which can be definitely high, so if you want to run a faster cooldown art, which might synergize better with the kit, that is definitely an option to consider. There are a lot of good options that might be very helpful to have, though there aren't too many amazing options that have shorter cooldowns, so I consider this probably the best art to run in most situations, especially because it's going to be your most powerful art and chain attacks should you want to use those. The class skills that this class has include Storm and Stress. Every time you perform a cancel, you boost your damage dealt by 20%, up to a maximum of 150%. This is probably the defining skill for the set. This is your big damage boost, and it is really, really easy to stack this and cap it out very, very quickly into a fight because of how fast you can cancel your arts and just get into your 150% damage multiplier very quickly and just start spamming a bunch of really high damage attacks. I think this is a great skill. It's one of the main reasons to use this kit, and it's one of the main things that makes the kit so fun as well. Flashing Punch is the next skill, and this states that chained auto attacks increase attack speed. Auto attack interval is also shortened. Now, with my current setup, this doesn't come into use too much because you're not auto attacking that often at all compared to how often you're using arts, but this can be nice to get your art cooldowns up a little bit faster, and I think it is a pretty decent skill because of that, although not the most impactful in most situations. Feline Riding Reflex ignores blowdown and launch by somersaulting. It also has a 100% chance to grant attack up. Now, this is probably the least useful skill. Ignoring blowdown and launch is nice, although I've never really seen it be that effective in most fights, and the 100% chance to grant attack up is nice, but you can probably get that buff from just having a good supportive party in most situations, so you're not going to get the most use out of that. Still, I guess it can be useful to ignore blowdown and launch in certain fights, so that gives the skill some use at the very least. Frenzied Combo. Every time you get a critical hit with an art, it'll recharge the art by 30%. This works with multi-hit arts, so if you crit multiple times with a multi-hit art, it'll recharge the art by 60% if you do it twice. Now, unfortunately, Martial Artist doesn't have any multi-hit arts on its standard arts, but your master arts can be multi-hit, and that can be pretty useful in a lot of situations if you want to run some master arts that have strong multi-hits. And even if the standard arts on the kit only hit one time, this still increases your recharge speed and makes the class one of the absolute fastest in the game, especially when you're running the shorter cooldown arts. For master skills, I am running Ultimate Qigong. This will ignore 50% of enemies' physical defense when landing a hit. Almost all of my arts are physical, and I'm going to take advantage of this because of that. Just in case you haven't seen any other videos where I have explained this, the skill is a bit misleading with the wording. Instead of just ignoring 50% of an enemy's physical defense, it actually lowers an enemy's physical defense by 50 percentage points, and that can go into negative values. That makes this a really powerful skill, and I think it's one of the best skills in the game to run on all physical-based damage classes. Critical Strike will increase critical hit damage bonus by 50 percentage points. This is another amazing skill to have because Martial Artist has a really high critical hit rate, and I find it to be one of the best to take advantage of this skill and get a bunch of extra damage every time you get a critical hit. My critical hit rate is 57% with my current setup, and this means on a majority of my attacks, I'll be getting a pretty large damage bonus. Covert Attack will reduce aggro generated from attacks by 65%. As I play this game more and more, I find myself liking this skill more and more. I think this is actually a really useful skill to make sure you basically never get aggro no matter how much you're spamming attacks, and it works particularly well for a really spammy class like Martial Artist, so you can just keep doing your high damage moves as much as possible. There are definitely other skills you could run to get more damage here, but I find the general safety of running this and allowing yourself to never get aggro is going to allow you to do more damage in the long run in most fights. This is a really, really good skill in this game just because of how aggro works and how you can basically get one-shotted as a DPS, and you don't want to just rely on your evasion and not get one-shot, so I think this is a good skill to consider in a lot of situations. If you do want to run a more damaging option, you can consider Physical Prowess. Fighting Prowess, just to get a boost to your physical arts by 50% basically at all times. You could also consider running Maniac to get a 50% boost to higher level enemies if you plan on fighting super bosses. For my gem setup, I am running Analyze Weakness to take even more advantage of the critical hit damage bonus with my high critical hit rate. I'm running Empowered Combo to get a boost to all of my damage every time I cancel into attacks because cancels synergize extremely well with Martial Artists to get all of your damage boosts. And Disperse Bloodlust is the last bit of aggro reduction you need to basically ensure that you're never going to be getting aggro at any point in the fight unless a bunch of people die. Now, you could run a standard attack boost if you really, really want to. That'll increase it by 75, although that is not a high percentage of your attack at this point, so you'd get maybe a 4 to 5% boost at most. Steady Striker and Double Strike might be gems you might want to consider because this class does scale decently with auto attacks because of how fast you can attack with the stance art, but I think doing arts and canceling into them is going to give you way, way more damage in the long run, so I don't really think these are the best gems because of that. My accessories are basically just ring spam. I have the Saturni rings, which will boost my attack by 40%, giving a large boost to your maximum attack and increasing basically all of your damage by a flat 40%, which can be really, really beneficial in most fights. Lunae rings will boost damage dealt by fusion arts by 100%. This gives your fusion arts a lot of benefit and can be really, really powerful. And Mercury rings will boost critical rate by 60%. I find this to be particularly useful just to increase my critical rate as much as possible, from 36% to 57%. And it's pretty much a staple on a kit like this where you want to get as many critical hits as you can in a lot of situations. Warped White Brooch could be a consideration to lower enemy physical defense even further, but I did some calculations and Lunae rings will give you more damage in the long run because of how many additives you currently have on the kit, being only the cancel damage currently. And Mercury rings are just really nice to have for the critical hit rate, although you could replace them if you just want more damage in general, so that is an option as well. That's going to cover it for my setup, so let's take a look at how to use the class practically and destroy super bosses in a matter of minutes, even on the highest difficulties. Let's get straight into the fun, shall we? Seraphic Seratenia on hard mode. I think this will be pretty interesting to show off just how fast you can kill even the strongest enemies on the highest difficulty. Now, I'm not doing level 200 because my dexterity sucks right now and I have to replace an additional accessory to do that. Once aggro is off me and on someone else, I can just kind of start going into my art spam pretty quickly here. I have only one tank in the party right now, that is my friend Lons. He is going to do a great job, hopefully, and even if he doesn't, we should be fine anyway. Right now, I'm just trying to cancel my arts as much as I can and build up my multiplier, and eventually I'll start using fusion arts for some more powerful options. But you can see right now, I haven't even gained aggro yet at all, so this is going pretty well, and I shouldn't be getting aggro at all this entire time. I have a Troubadour on my team, so I'll be able to get some additional recharge from standing inside the Ring of Roses circle, which will help me out even further. And you can see right now, after 45 seconds, he's already down a pretty decent chunk of health, but it's going to start going even faster once my multipliers and everything are completely up. We're getting some pretty powerful hits, 150 to 200,000 damage pretty easily, and some hits are going to go even higher than that later. Thanks to my current setup, we can get a lot of art recharge from other sources as well. I just did Raging Force to show off a 1.5 million hit there, which is pretty dang powerful. But it does reduce all your art cooldowns, so some situations it may not be worth it. You just have to decide. But it's really worth it when you have power charge and can take a lot of advantage of that. So I think that's one of the big benefits. Now there's all my arts again. This is why Troubadour is really good. And we're hitting some really high damage numbers, 300 to 400,000 there. Using Cross Impact before the Jackal Claw Hidden Thorn part is really useful to get some really high damage. Got another 800,000 with the Raging Force there. And we're just kind of going ham, and we haven't even taken aggro officially yet. We've got some good buffs from Signifer. We don't even have combos right now, so we're not like taking advantage of that. We're just basically just doing some damage. We got one tank, and we're able to just kind of deal with it anyway. Now, this can work on level 200. If you are wondering, you just have to replace one of your accessories and have slightly lower damage, and it'll take a little bit longer. But that's not really a huge issue. You can replace some things like the crit rate and covert attack and just try to go for more damage, but you're probably going to take aggro really quickly in that sense, and it'll be a lot harder if you don't have like characters supporting with combos to stop the enemies from attacking you. Because if you get one shot, then you're basically screwed. But right now, with this setup, it's really not that difficult to just kind of go ham. I'm getting some really powerful attacks, and he's going to die at 2 minutes and 24 seconds on hard mode, just basically spamming martial artist arts. This also works if you don't have a healer in your party. If you want to have a really funny setup like that, that'll have your healers running some art recharge with Protector's Pride and Fraternal Badge to get their arts up faster so they can spam more art recharge effects for you, which can be pretty useful. You'll probably have some one-shots along the way, but that's not really a big deal as long as the healers can revive, and as long as you, as the primary character, do not get aggro, you should be fine. The AoE should not be able to one-shot you unless you are extremely unlucky. And another million damage with Raging Force there, pretty easy, and we can end the battle almost the exact same time. Probably could have done it a little earlier if I had my allies alive a little bit longer, but you know. So now I'm going to do a fight on normal mode just to kind of show off a little bit of chain attack stuff, although I'm not going to show off much just because I don't really think that's the main strength of this class. There are other classes you can use to get a lot more benefits from chain attacks than something like this that has a little bit lower strength stat and is focused more on using arts as much as possible rather than just doing the strongest arts possible. Of course, I say that as I have Hidden Thorn equipped right now. But at the very least, I do think this is a really useful benefit of the class in general, just being able to do a lot of damage really fast against basically every enemy. Now, I wasn't standing in front of the enemy when I was in that recharge circle over there, and unfortunately Lons is putting his fast recharge circles in bad spots right now. So I need to get my positionals to make sure I can use Raging Force. So I'm just going to stand in front of the enemy, and I should be all right. So that tail inflicts blowdown, so I think that's one of the reasons I can avoid it, because that's one of the skills of this set. But I already had an attack up, so that didn't really make a difference there. Now, this dragon has this invincibility effect, and that's the only time we can't really do any damage to him, so I'm just going to wait until this expires, and then we should be good to go. You can see I'm just getting a lot of crits there. That was a big chunk of damage right there as well. So with a 57% critical hit rate, that's usually enough to be just fine and not have too many issues. At this point, I'm just going into my Ouroboros form to try to get a combo with Lons to get the launch and just kind of kill him in a chain attack if I can. So that's the benefit of that. You can see my Ouroboros arts aren't doing nearly as much of my martial artist arts either, so you can see just kind of how beneficial that is in general. After the launch, I go into the chain attack, and this should be a pretty easy fight from here as well. This should work against most enemies in the game, and the aggro reduction is just really beneficial to make sure you're not taking aggro and can just keep focusing on using your combos and spamming as much as possible. And all your fusion arts should be able to hit really hard, and you can kind of see here in a chain attack, you can get some decent damage on the launch, although canceling into the arch, you're not getting that much more damage in the chain attack, at least not right now. But you can get some later in the chain attack, and maybe you'll be able to apply bleed if you're lucky like I was actually able to there, so that's pretty cool if nothing else. No other class really has the exact same level of spam as this one. Signifer and Zephyr can come pretty close, and some other classes can kind of reach it too if they specifically focus on their recharge effects. But this is the only class where you don't really have to have any recharge items or accessories and can still spam just really, really fast in general. So I think it's one of the best classes for that reason alone, and I really like the just raw damage this class can output, even if it's not going to be the best in chain attacks for most situations. Which is kind of what you see here. It's strong, but it's not the absolute amazing greatest. I'd say this is definitely a class that has more strengths outside of chain attacks than inside of chain attacks for that reason alone. Now, other classes, if you use the Covert Attack and Disperse Bloodlust combo, can definitely get some decent damage and not take aggro as well. I don't know if it'll be as fast as this class. I don't know if it might actually have more DPS than Incursor or Seraph or not, but I know those classes are definitely better in chain attacks. But at the very least, you can definitely get a lot of damage with this class, and might be something to test out in the future. This class could definitely hit harder than it's hitting right now, but you'll probably have to get rid of some of your aggro reduction or roll the RNG with less crit rate, so I think it's probably more beneficial to run a setup like this in general, just for the most safety and the most amount of DPS without having to worry about getting one shot at any time, which will reset your additive multiplier and reset all your art cooldowns while you wait to be revived. And you might just get aggro back again really, really quickly just because of how much damage this class can do really fast. I think that is going to cover it for this guide. I don't really have anything else to say. I hope you guys learned something from watching this video, and we'll look forward to all of my future guides on all of the remaining classes, and a couple other things I do have planned. If you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below, and tell me what you want to see next. And I do appreciate all of the support, and please look forward to all of my future guides on the series. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for allowing me to get past the 2/3 point on the way to 100,000 subscribers. That's such a big milestone, and I'm forever grateful for that. And thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful and blessed day, and hopefully I'll see you soon.